thank you very much for coming to this session. It's a very special session that was submitted by Flor Dres and Jimmy Angelakos, and they invited Karen to be part of this panel. They invited me to be the host because I was the second best host possible for this session. The first one couldn't come. And the idea is that we are going to be talking about how to work with other Postgres people. When we say people, we know that everybody is unique, and therefore we are all different. And because we are all different, we all react different to the many different inputs. And this is what we are going to be actually explaining a little bit further. Now, when we talk about people and we talk about brains, we know that brains are also wired in particular different ways, everybody with his unique traits. We talk a lot about neurodiversity nowadays, which is a new name for conditions like ADHD or autism and other type of things that are called conditions, but are actually just different wire for brains. There are actually studies that suggest that this type of wiring is a part of evolution. So you have different roles that people needed to play when we were hunters and gatherers, and therefore we were able to evolve our brains in different ways. But before continuing with this introduction, I would like to introduce you to the people that is going to be participating in this panel. And as you can see, we are sitting in the name and the order of the names that are on the slide. Flor Dres, please, can you explain who are you and why are you here?
Why am I here? Okay, thanks. So hi, my name is Flor. I work for EDB as a principal program manager. I also am on the diversity committee for Postgres Europe. I organize PGConf Lowlands. I'm on the Code of Conduct committee. I do a whole bunch of volunteering, means that I'm chronically busy and powered by ADHD, which means that sometimes I feel on top of the world and sometimes I feel incredibly inadequate.
Good, thank you. Jimmy Angelakos.
Hi. I work at PGEdge as a staff software engineer. I'm a member of Postgres Europe and a member of the diversity committee of PostgreSQL Europe. Growing up, I recognized that I had some autistic traits, but I thought the depiction of autism, growing up in the 80s, was quite different to me. So I thought that can't be, and I ignored them until a few years back when I was actually diagnosed as being on the autistic spectrum.
Good, thank you, Jimmy. Karen Jex.
Hi, so I'm Karen. I work at Snowflake, was Crunchy Data. I am currently a solutions architect, which I came to from a history of about 20 years as a database administrator. I always just wanted to be a technical person, but somehow now I spend a lot of my time speaking at conferences, helping to organize conferences. I'm on the Postgres Europe board, and I'm chairing the Postgres Europe Diversity Committee. I'm also autistic, and those stereotypes felt even less, I imagine, as though they applied to me. So I've only realized a few years ago, and it finally made a lot of my life make sense. And I was only formally diagnosed very recently, which was when I gave myself permission to actually tell other people and really start to accept those things about myself. A lot of people still don't know, or I expect they do now, and they will once the recording's out. So, hi, I'm autistic. But a lot of people don't see it or don't know because I mask so much, which is a defense mechanism to blend in, to not stand out, to not be different. And I'm trying to unlearn some of that, partly because it's absolutely exhausting, and it's one of the reasons that I'm often close to burnout.
Good. So before going to the more fun questions, we're going to start with a very serious question. If you would have to explain your brain to somebody else with a song, which song would you pick?
All right, well, I have a song based on lyrics, which is Free by Florence and the Machine, so definitely listen to that, then you have an idea of what is going on in my brain at all times. But if there would be, I feel like if the perfect song doesn't exist, but it would be like free jazz played at twice the speed by a punk rock band. That would probably be the perfect song of what's going on.
Thank you. Jimmy, which song will be your brain?
I think the best metaphor would be a movie, which is Everything Everywhere All at Once. because everything is happening at the same time, and it's really difficult to pick on what to focus on. But one of the things I can do is hyper-focus once I've identified that I'm not actually focusing. Song-wise, it would probably be something silly like Nyan Cat or Happy Tree Friends.
Good. Karen.
So, as I was saying earlier, this is a question where my literal thinking brain was like, well, I can't describe my brain as a song. I thought, well, that doesn't even make sense. But, you know, there is one song that kind of came to mind that I do identify with, and that will also very much show my age, which is Chumbawamba's Tub Thumping, I Get Knocked Down, but I Get Up Again.
Yeah, good. Okay, so my song will be Nebraska by Ampirle, so if you want to check that out. Now, we are going to be asking for input from the audience at a certain point, but now I'm not going to ask you right now that, but if you would like to think about what will be your song during the day, maybe you will address somebody today and they will say, hey, my name is Boris and my brain song is. And you can kind of get to know other people.
We can make a Spotify playlist.
Let's make a Spotify list. That's a very good idea. So we were mentioning hunters and gatherers, and we were talking about how evolution actually created this kind of different wiring in brains. If you think about how society was organized before, somebody with autism traits would have been a perfect monk, because he could concentrate without having to interact with many other people, but then producing knowledge that is available for everybody. Now, for hunters, definitely ADHD is very good, because when you are trying to hunt something and you see something there, it is very good that you can observe things in a many different ways. So this is why it is evolutionary, one of the theories that explain why we have so many different brains. Now, one of the questions that was placed when the panel was proposed is when this becomes a problem, actually, that we are all wired in different ways. And we believe that is when the standardization of jobs and society, that you expect that everybody is going to behave like the majority, then is when it becomes a problem. And then when we start having some challenges. So I would like to ask the panelists now who would like to start about which challenges you have observed in the working environment, either in your company or in the community.
How much time do you have? So let me start, because you said modernization and standardization of jobs. What I don't appreciate is 20th and 21st century management gurus coming up with things like to standardize performance measurement and workplace interactions like KPIs, OKRs, standardized things that mechanize the work process so that everyone is predictable and everyone's the same, but they don't account for individuality, and that for the simple fact that people do things differently.
So standardization is one of the challenges that you've been facing.
Definitely. While I'm still holding the mic, my other pet hates, if you want to call them that, are open plan offices, because I can't concentrate on them. I find them very distracting. And being different, I don't often appreciate things that are welcome in the workplace, such as interruptions, socializing. I find them irrelevant to my work, and I find them distracting and unwelcome. So that probably makes me a weird person, and it probably makes me appear distant.
Karen, would you like to share some challenges?
Yeah, so I tried to restrict myself to a short list. And again, this is kind of an indication of how my brain works, because this is how I wrote it down. I didn't go into kind of a long wishy-washy explanation. I've said sensory overload, lights, noises, and people. Constant distractions and context switching, and implied expectations rather than explicit instructions.
Good, thank you. Floor, do you want to share some challenges?
So I have a lot of challenges with time management and not volunteering for stuff. So I take way too much on because I think I can handle everything. But also I feel like there is this misconception that people with ADHD have a ton of energy and they'll never run out of energy. And so there's also just a lot of stuff that will be thrown on me by bad managers because they think I will eventually handle all of that anyway. Also, because I'm bad at time management and then maybe sometimes I'm more productive at hours that are not necessarily your normal working hours, people see me active on Slack all of the time. And so we'll also just throw more stuff and more stuff and more stuff because, you know, I have endless energy, so I will deal with it at one point. So that's what I struggle with, just people assuming that, you know, there's just an infinite amount of stuff that they can just pile on.
Okay, then I apologize because I'm going to throw more stuff to you now. So if you could share some positive experiences that you have seen in the work environment where you see that the differences are kind of acknowledged and then something has been done so that everybody is welcome and everybody has a way of reacting differently to the different inputs.
Yeah, so I have had a wonderful manager in my time at Ivan who also has ADHD, but had a little bit more experience being diagnosed much earlier. And she helped me very much with sort of like the urgency importance diagram to understand, you know, what task I really need to do now versus what task I can do later. And also just a little bit of like practical tips that she gave me of like, you can schedule stuff in Slack, you know, like, if you don't want to appear available at night when you're maybe more productive, make sure that you schedule the stuff to go out in the morning so it appears like you're doing your normal working hours and people will maybe less likely talk to you in the evenings.
That's a good one. Karen, Jimmy, which one would you like to continue?
Yeah, okay. I thought to start with that I would have difficulty thinking of positive things, but actually there have been some times when you know, I've had very supportive managers and people that have done things. So my current manager actually, I don't think he fully understands how I work, but he makes an attempt to understand, which is really important. And he constantly checks in with me to make sure I'm not taking on too much, that he's not throwing too much at me, because he knows that I will say yes to things and I will make every effort to get those things done until, like you say, there isn't endless energy. At some point there will be burnout if you keep just taking things on. So he's really good and he checks in with me. And even just here this week, my fellow organisers, there was a task that they knew might be difficult for me because it involved a lot of social interaction, and rather than either just hand me the task or not hand me it because they thought I might not deal with it, they just said, would you be comfortable doing this? And that was really nice.
Nice to hear that. Jimmy?
I would say the most positive things that have happened work-wise in the past 15 years, I would say, is how acceptable remote working has become.
Yeah.
That helps me a lot. It helps a lot with concentration. And I would also say that I really appreciate the policy at PG Edge for unrestricted time off.
Interesting. Good.
But can I respond to that? Because
Yes.
I find that incredibly hard because, you know, like unlimited, I already don't remember what time I took off before.
No, it's clearly limited, but it's unrestricted.
Oh, well, okay, fair enough, yeah. But
There are limits, like you have to let people know how ahead of time that you're going to be away for a month.
Sure, yeah, but I always think, like, I think maybe because sometimes I will feel very inadequate, I always think like, oh, I'm already taking so much time of the company, it can't possibly take more time. So I think with like unlimited vacation days would, for instance, not work for me at all. Someone needs to remind me that I have, I don't know, 25 days and I need to take them, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. And this is a really, really good example of how everybody's different, and a policy that works really well for one person doesn't work great for another person. I need that explicit, you have X number of days and I can count them off and know when I'm allowed to use them. Yeah.
Exactly. So this is a panel discussion. So the idea is that this is not a show that we are throwing to you ideas about it, but we would like to have also some input. So if anybody here would like to share, not because you are neurodivergent, but because you have observed some situations that you say, oh, this is a challenge because people are different and we try to standardize something and it didn't work, for instance, or we have observed that we have in our group or community or company put some policy that helps to allocate this divergence. Maybe somebody would like to share something. If you don't want to share anything, it doesn't matter. You can also put it on the feedback as well. But now it is an opportunity for you also to participate if you want to provide some inputs. Here we have one. Thank you, Haris.
Participant 1. I really agree with Jimmy regarding the problem of performance evaluation and its standardization. When companies try to measure everyone's career progress and the way they deal with work in the same way for everyone, it becomes very hard for people who have conditions. I know it's also hard for certain managers who don't want to make it public that they have team members with certain conditions. Participant 2. I wanted to share my own experience working with Jimmy. It was incredibly important that he told me right away, remember how I work, because his method is very different from how I work. I have endless energy, for real, and I was all about deadlines, deadlines, deadlines. Because I knew how he worked, it helped me not to panic when things weren't available right on time. That was probably the most amazing experience working together on project I ever had in my life. Literally, because I knew what to expect. I would be happy to do any other work with you, Jimmy.
Thank you. So there are two things that are here mentioned. Later. So he's talking about hiding some stuff because they can come up or something bad, and you're talking about awareness, which is very important. Now, having this kind of panel discussion also increases awareness so that we are all knowing about what are the implications of having this, and also that we can all do something so that everybody feels more welcome. Now, in one presentation from monitoring that I've observed like 2 years in DevOps days by Foy, I don't know his family, he's colorblind, and he works a lot in terms of improving dashboards for colorblind people. The good thing is that when you see the version that he produces for having better colorblind dashboard, it's also good for me, who I can see all colors, I think. So these kind of measures that you improve for some people that have a different brain or different physical condition also helps people that are more like in the norm, in the Gaussian way of talking about the normal stuff. So that means that every improvement that we can do in companies or community is not just modifying things so that we can adapt to 25% of the population, but is adding more stuff so that more people feel welcome. Yeah? So the colorblind monitoring dashboard I think is a very concrete example that you can see clearly that it helps everybody, not just the people who have colorblindness. Now, I would like to also ask so give me yours in your hand, which kind of things you think that can be done and in general for improving for everybody and not just for changing things and go against
yeah, sure, I can start. So one thing that I scheduled at previous companies where I worked is body doubling sessions. So there's always stuff that you do not want to do because, that I don't want to do because everything else for me always takes priority. One of them is expenses, for instance, and I will procrastinate on that and procrastinate on that. And it's also, I think it's called the ADHD tax, where you lose money because you just don't want to do those type of things. So I schedule a body doubling session with someone who also needs to get some task done that they really don't want to do. We jump on a call together. We both do the task. After the task is done, we congratulate each other, and we've both benefited really from something, and it didn't feel horrible. So, yeah, maybe
nice.
that's a
good trick.
Right, so because we're talking about accommodations, right? Some accommodations even start before you start working for someone, which is during the hiring process. I've noticed that hiring methods have tended to standardize around, fixed tests or fixed questions or questionnaires, and those don't work the same way for all people. Some people will just look at the questionnaire and turn around and leave, or some type of timed test is too much pressure for some people to deal with. Now, in the workplace, there's things you can do to help other people, like I know with how much we're online, and with everyone using team chats, Teams and Slack and everything else. One of the things that happens is sensory overload, as you mentioned. You can have too many messages and too many people talking to you at the same time. Another problem with working online is if you have problems with recognizing faces and no one has, it is one neurodivergent trait, face blindness. And if no one has their profile picture set in Slack and you just see J, a letter, that's not very good, because then once you run into your colleague, you won't know who they are. Another thing is people will leave profile pictures that are 10, 20, 30 years old, and you still are not able to recognize them. And while some people prefer to turn off cameras during online meetings, other people really appreciate it when you show your face on meetings.
Okay, thank you. Karen?
Yeah, so I think you've mentioned a lot of the things, and one of the things you were saying is that accommodations doesn't have to be even making, special adjustments for one person or one group of people. A lot of things benefit everyone. So we tried to do that a bit with the diversity committee, where we're really focusing on how can we make our spaces more welcoming and inclusive and accessible, so that we're trying to make sure that we do things for everyone. And we're quite near the beginning of that journey, so we are absolutely open to suggestions, and offers of help is always a good one. But at work, even without putting any particular things in place, I think listening, being there for your colleagues and just listening, asking what you can do to help, and recognizing that we are all different, we all work in different ways.
Okay, so you mentioned the diversity task force for Postgres community. We also have the Sunflower program that we have now, which is also something that is coming from the community that actually helps to feel people more welcome. Maybe can you say a little bit more about that?
Yep. So when I'm traveling, I wear a sunflower lanyard, or sometimes, if I prefer to be a bit more discreet about it, I'll just wear my little sunflower band. And there are more and more people that seem to recognize what that is and know what it is. So it gives me that little feeling of security sometimes in places where there is a lot of sensory overload. There are a lot of noises, a lot of sounds, a lot of lights, people.
Like bright lights in your face?
Yeah, the smells from, yes, that kind of thing. The smells from having to walk through the duty-free shop, the having to think about so many different things at once. Another trait that is often associated with autism is, well, I now know to call it, I think it's dyspraxia. I've always just called it clumsiness. So things like, having to go through security and getting stressed because you're getting things out, keeping hold of your passport, that kind of thing. And a lot of those things we kind of recognize are the same at a big conference where you're surrounded by 700-800 other people, and you've got lights and noises and lots of different things going on. So we wanted to make the sunflower lanyards available, make the training available to our organisers and volunteers, so that we know to look out for each other, to ask if people might need a bit of help, and just try and make people feel welcome. I think I went off topic there.
Yes. So there are also some studies that mention that, as you can see, the diversity task force, the sunflower lanyard, it is extending the possibilities for people to feel welcome in the community. It's not changing anything for the people that are more the neurotypical brain part. Now, there are other stuff that people suggest. For instance, Jimmy was mentioning that he doesn't like this chit-chat interaction because it's not based on his productive work. There are some ideas that if you're going to start a meeting like at 10 a.m. and then people are going to start talking about what they did in the weekend and everything, I particularly feel that it's super important for team building the spirit and then the connection between the members of the team. But not everybody will like to have that, as you see different reactions to the same situation or different situation. So then you can suggest, like, we meet at 10 a.m., then we can start having whatever discussion we want to have, but the real agenda of the meeting starts at 10 past 10. So everybody knows that if you want to skip the chit-chat, you arrive at 10 past 10. And if you arrive at 10 past 10, don't start doing chit-chat at that moment. So this is adding new possibilities so that everybody can have kind of a welcome environment and everybody can feel more like, okay, I'm really part of this team because I'm being seen. So awareness is very important. So this is a thing that can be done by the company, by the community now, but in the personal level, you started already mentioning this activity. It's called double...
Body doubling.
Body doubling, which has nothing to do with people from Dublin.
I didn't come up with the name.
Okay, good. And do you have any other favorite tricks or something? And while you are sharing your tricks, maybe some people here have also some tricks, and this is the second moment that we are going to ask for input for you to get some tricks. So think about that. So maybe you can start, Flor.
All right, so maybe video calls, for me, it's incredibly hard to concentrate on these things. They go on, and if I'm not scheduled to speak, I am lost, so I need to do something in the background. So I think there's a lot of video recordings where you see me like knitting or whatever. Like I need to do something to keep my hands occupied so that I can focus on what's being said. I really like that many meetings are recorded because they are good for some people. For me, they're not good because, you know, like I can stop it at any time and I will probably never come back to it. So for me, a transcript is much better, that I can search and I can get the stuff that I need and then leave it, because otherwise, if it's not going on live, it's not now, and so it's not relevant for me. I can't deal with it very well.
Does anybody else like transcript for meetings?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So, all right, good. What about having a dog?
What about having a dog? Oh, yeah, nice one. Yeah, so if I wouldn't have a dog, I think my day would be very unstructured. And so I need to have those moments to actually, you know, like 3 or 4 times a day I need to walk the dog. That makes also sure that I have breakfast and that I get up and I go to the bathroom and that kind of stuff, which is helpful because otherwise I would just be stuck at my desk because there is 100 things to do. And if I just stay there, I will get all of them done, right?
Good, thank you. Karen, you want to go?
Yeah, so I've got a few techniques that I use. So I did actually bring my props with me. I don't know where it is now, but yeah, I know. And I actually brought it with me because I thought I might need it. You'll probably already have seen me. If I'm sitting in a talk or in a meeting, I will usually be crocheting, because I actually concentrate so much better if I'm doing that. So, you know, people might look and think, oh, she's being rude, she's not concentrating, but that is me concentrating. That's what I do. If I've got something to do with my hands, then that's good. I also have some issues, not with time management so much, but with context switching. Context switching is very, very difficult, and obviously in most of our jobs we have a lot of different things that we need to do. I can hyper-focus. I can focus on one thing for deeply and for a long time, but what I find difficult is moving between tasks. So I've had to learn to do time boxing. So I say, right, I'm going to spend 2 hours working on this and then 2 hours working on this, and I actually put that into my calendar so it's there and I know that that's the time that I am focusing on that. And I would just say one more thing really quickly, and that is I created a README for myself. So I explained how my brain works, the things that work for me or that don't work for me, how I prefer to have information presented. And I shared that with my colleagues and my manager, and it's actually on my blog so that anybody can go and read it and find out how I work. And I would absolutely love to have a README for every single one of my colleagues.
Okay, good. Jimmy, you want to go with a tip?
Sure. You mentioned meetings. A good thing is when there's something important, like an all hands or a strategy meeting or anything that needs people to attend, is to have 2 of them. One in the morning and one in the afternoon, or on 2 separate days, because that helps. Well, I am infamous for losing track of time. Everyone who knows me knows that. I might miss one of those meetings because I'm focused on doing something else. Other people work better in the morning. Other people can pay more attention in the afternoon, right? So it's good to have 2 sessions at different times of day.
Good, thank you. So, anybody want to share a trick that you think it works for you, but it might work for other people?
Participant 3. At least it shows that you are not alone with things where you sometimes believe you are the only person on the planet struggling with it, wondering why you are struggling while everyone else seems to handle it just fine. It's simply because you don't know their story. I appreciate it a lot. Regarding the discussion about meetings and not being able to concentrate, while it's partially my job, I fully agree. I struggle a lot with it. People who know me know that I always have something in my hands. I need to be juggling or have a Rubik's Cube or, to the surprise of some, bones on my ball. It calms me down, but it's distracting on camera, so I decided to switch. What helps me really well is to combine 2 things. I learned that just going for a walk is refreshing, fresh air, just walking. But when I combine both listening to a meeting, even on a one-to-one, while walking, I realize that I can have 3 of them back-to-back and still be able to remember things from the first one. I do the same thing in the office. I get distracted after 5 minutes and can barely remember what someone said 10 seconds ago. So basically, being off Slack, email, and everything else that bombs you all the time, and just fully listening, walking, and seeing nature, that at least helps me.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so
While he gets
I was going to just hand...
while he gets the microphone, I will share one that I think works for everybody.
Sorry, Slanek.
When you want to avoid the distractions of email, Slack, or all these kind of inputs that you get while you're trying to work, there is a technique called Pomodoro. It comes from the Pomodoro clocks that were in the kitchen, means tomato in Italian, and then it's 25 minutes where you just concentrate in one single task and you don't do anything in terms of reading emails or stuff like that. It's super productive. And then you take a break and then you can start another Pomodoro. Now, I tried to do that. My problem was that I was always looking at the clock. How many minutes do I still have?
Exactly.
How many? So I got a second problem. So I developed my own Pomodoro technique, which is playlist. I have playlists with songs that are around 25 minutes. I don't have to cut it like 25 minutes. And I have different moods, like a heavy mood, heavier mood, super heavy mood. Okay. Also some soft and relaxing playlists. And I know that, okay, I need to do something, and I put that playlist, and because I know them, I know, oh, okay, there's still one song coming, so I know that I still have 5 minutes to finish something, and I boost myself. So this is Pomodoro technique with the clock, or a Pomodoro playlist. I think that might work for some other people. You have one input, and then we have one, and then we can start closing.
Participant 4. Our staff all process information differently. We have to make sure that when we put something out, whether it's a to-do list or a benefits update or anything else, that is presented in a way that people with different abilities to understand and process information can do so. We'll have something done in a Kanban style, and then we'll also have just a plain black print checklist on a white background with nothing around it. Other people need narratives. When I figured out everybody's learning style, I decided, okay, I'm just going to put out the different options, and then people can use the one that works best for them. When I suggest this to my human resources clients, they say, oh, but that's more work for me. I tell them, but you only do it once, and the benefits to your company means you get all this employee time back. I am really trying to encourage employers to adopt these methods. It's simple, it's just not that hard, and it makes everything easier. Participant 5. The person who did my ADHD diagnosis happened to be an ADHD researcher at the University of British Columbia. So she had some really interesting insights. One of her insights, for people who like to feature or have things in their hands, is that you can also have fidgets that are not your hands or upper body. This is important because you can very often get carpal tunnel syndrome or tennis elbow if you are, say, crocheting all the time. She had 2 suggestions. Think about lower body fidget. The exercise ball is one really good option. There is also a flat air-filled seat pad that you can put on basically any chair. Those work well too. She also suggested looping an exercise extension band, one of those big elastics, around the bottom of your desk chair so you can kick against it with one of your feet. The third thing she suggested, which she said was really good for people in offices, was lava lamps. You can use it as a visual stimulus. Just watch the lava lamp go up and down as a way to relieve your hands a little bit, because this, I imagine, gets problematic. That's the thing number 1, and I forgot what else I was going to say.
Okay, good, thank you. No, it's a very good trips, and you see, there's one there here. People can be very creative, and you see that it's going to add stuff to the whole group and the whole community. It's not just we need to change things because there are some people that are claiming that they need some special. No, this is making it bigger for everybody. Yeah.
Participant 6. Hi, thank you for the talk. I really found myself in some of the speeches. I have never diagnosed myself, but maybe I should consider it. Because of all this, I even moved out of London just to work alone and not visit the office. The strategy I am using a lot is the following. I work with a US company, so a question will often come in on Slack at night. I find it hard not to start working on it straight away. So what I usually do is that I will say, thank you, I will certainly take a look at this. Then I will type, but not send, something like, working on it. Please ping me if I am not coming back to you in an hour or 2. This will be my start of a Pomodoro session. In the morning, I will send this message, and after some time, they will ping me if I have switched to something else. The question is, I feel that since I moved, I'm going down a slope. I am making myself even less available, more far from the team. I do think that this can not only be the team accepting me, it is a two-way road. So my question is, do you do something from your side to make it easier to work in the team?
Okay, so while the microphone goes to, then maybe somebody would like to answer the question?
Yeah, I think that is definitely one of the things that it is a two-way street, and that's why one of the things that I was saying is I would love a README from everybody, neurotypical or neurodivergent, so that I know how I can best work with other people, because it's not just about people making accommodations for me and the way I work. Absolutely, it's about making it good for everybody. So I think it's hard for me to answer because I've spent my whole adult life masking and trying to hide my differences and fit in. So I think I am constantly making adjustments. So other people might have other input there.
To answer your question again, for me, the accommodations I make is I am much more aware now that I do things that are not as accepted, let's say, and might be annoying to other people. And I try to remind myself that I can be the problem in some cases, and to be more accepting of other people, of other people's behavior, other people's mistakes, and so on.
Good. Okay. Thank you. So who has the microphone there? Okay, we have time, so that's good. So,
Participant 7. This is rather difficult because there is no one-size-fits-all map. What helped me were years of therapy and making my own map. Every so often it comes back, and then I get a bad feeling because I miss something, and it haunts me. We all know this. What really helps is finding the right person to do the therapy. For the boss thing, I totally agree. Having the right boss is key. My boss is very similar to me, and he will say, okay, I see you. You are about to burn out. Stop. Block all the appointments. Cancel them. He will give me positive feedback, telling me, you are empowering 5 other people. You are the right person to do that. But I, myself, don't have this self-recognition. So I guess the answer is find the right therapist, have a proper map for yourself, and if you stray off, return to your positive map.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much.
Can I-
Thank you.
A very, very, very quick comment, right? When we're talking about neurodiversity and all these differences, like Boris mentioned, color blindness, that's a developmental difference, right? Brains grow differently, they perceive things differently, and they're not necessarily diseases or problems that you need to deal with. I just wanted to throw that in really quickly.
Can I also respond really quickly? Because I think we all got diagnosed at a later age. One thing that it definitely did for me, like, of course, like you can consider therapy or medication, but one thing that it definitely did for me is just like, I give myself so much more grace. And you know, I'm not beating myself up over not being able to accomplish things that seem indeed like very simple for other people, right? Like, oh, all of the other adults in school don't forget to give their kids this thing. Why am I the person that always forgets? I'm a terrible mother. No, I'm not. I really am not. Yeah.
I'm still working on that, but I'm getting there.
We have one here, and then yeah.
Participant 8. We all have some diagnosis. Those managers also have some diagnosis. We should not forget that, because there is this high functional anxiety issue. Top managers are usually suffering really badly from this. One thing that happens is that they expect high functional anxiety from others because of their own. They want to have problems quickly solved. The reality is, many people work very strongly in their subconscious, but they need time to process things subconsciously. So, many meetings are actually about, oh, we are so good because we are high functional anxiety people, and we raise our hand to say what the solution is. This is completely wrong, because this is something we were taught in school. Who first raises the hand is the winner. This is nonsense. The person who first raises their hand is usually the high functional anxiety person. And this is not the way to produce good solutions. Good solutions are usually produced after some processing in the subconscious. I fortunately had managers who understood this, and they always said at the end of the meeting, well, we discussed it, let's sleep on it, and let's continue tomorrow, because otherwise our solutions would be based on high functional anxiety.
Thank you. So we have 5 minutes more. I would like to take the last from, and then I'm going to wrap up. I see that there are more people willing to participate. This is very good for us because it means that it is something that everybody is aware now, and then you want to share that with us. We're going to be the rest of the day as well here, and also you can talk to all the people. So we're very happy with the reception of the panel.
Yeah.
Participant 9. Thank you for sharing this. I definitely see myself in it. Like Floor, I take on too many tasks. Some of them not right now, some of them in the future. What works for me is to get all of what I have to do out of my head. I write it down into a to-do list, and I add a date and a time to it. That way, I don't have to think about it for a week, a month, a year, or 20 years from now. At some point, the task comes back to me and says, okay, now there's something you have to do. And in the meantime, I don't have to deal with it.
Okay, yeah, that's a good trick as well. Thank you. Okay, so we are so used to the blue lanyards and the red lanyards that it's completely normal. Now we are introducing a third lanyard, which is the sunflower, and it's going to become the norm then, like, okay, it's fine to have that. Also, when people describe themselves, I'm an introvert, I'm an extrovert, nobody reacts with it, and it's like, yeah, okay, fine, that's how things are. Do you think that we are also going in that direction with neurodiversity? It's to wrap up this panel, that at a certain moment it's going to be like, oh, look, I have ADHD. Okay, well, that's how things are. And then people are more aware, and then we just simply adapt to whatever it is in front of us. Who wants to start to wrap up your last words before we go to the coffee break, and then we can continue with
Yeah, I very much hope not to hear people saying to me as a compliment, oh, you hide it really well.
You hide it really well, yes. Yes. Jimmy?
I think speaking out and speaking about these topics benefits everyone. It sure turned things around for me when I started realizing by hearing other people's stories that I shared some traits with them, and maybe it's something I should look into.
Yeah.
Good, thank you.
No, so again, I also found out much later in life, like I had people ask me about it, like, do you maybe potentially, you know? And I was like, no, absolutely not, because I didn't know anyone that I thought like, oh, with ADHD, where I was like, yeah, I'm totally like that person. And then one person got up on stage once and told about his ADHD, and he said the one sentence, and it was like, there's only 2 times for me. It's now and not now. And I was just like, what? That is exactly how I feel. And it was just incredibly helpful, you know, because then you realize that maybe you need to find out a bit more about yourself and, again, get yourself more grace.
And not all ADHD are the same
exactly.
traits. We
Yes.
just group in some of the traits and we give them a name to try to kind of have some guidelines. Okay, so the panel is finishing now, but the discussion can continue. So I invite everybody to not just talk to us, but talk to each other, and then raise awareness, and then try to find some of the tricks that works for one people might work for other people as well, and then try to find some initiatives in your community, the company where you're working, and also with your friends and family. So thank you very much.